الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. اللهم ربنا لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله. اللهم ربنا لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد يا رب عند الرضا ولك الحمد على حمدنا إياك. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وارض عنا يا ربي وارض عنا مع النبي وأصحابه يا أكرم الأكرمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I invoke His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his family, his household, his companions, and everyone that walks in their footsteps or adheres to their path. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make each and every one of us among them. Allahumma ameen. My brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In Surah Al-Isra, in verses 61 through 65, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about a conversation that took place between the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala and one who was known at that time as Tawusul Malaika, the peacock of all the angels, one who had made prostration on every inch of this land, of this earth. But that man turned out to change after that conversation. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and perfected his creation and then commanded the angels to prostrate before Adam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ قَالَ أَسْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا. On that day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded them, all the angels fell in prostration before Adam alayhi salam. But Iblis, who was there, who was a jinn, refused the command of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, Ya Allah, you're asking me to prostrate before one that you've created from clay? As if he's telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are you serious? What is wrong with you? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to him and tells him, Ukhruj minha, leave. If you're not going to obey me in my own realm and my own domain, then leave. You do not deserve to be here. And then Shaytan tells the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَحْتَنِكَنَّ ذُرِّيَّتَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He says, Ya Allah, I will show you that this human being that you have favored and that you have honored and you've commanded me to prostrate to, I will أَحْتَنِكَنَّ ذُرِّيَّتَهُ. And that is a very interesting verb that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses here. أَحْتَنِكَنَّ comes from the word hanak, which is the mouth. When people used to domesticate horses, and they would put the rein of the horse in the mouth so that the horse would never be able to resist anything they do. They pull right, the horse veers right. They pull left, the horse veers left. So they have absolute control over the animal, that they say, احتنكت الفرس. I have total control over the animal. And this is the exact verb that Shaytan uses when he issues that challenge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, I will have full sway and full control over the progeny of Adam. This is what he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to him and says, اذهب. He told him, then go. فَمَنِ اتَّبَعَكَ مِنْهُمْ فَإِنَّ جَهَنَّمَ جَزَاؤُكُمْ جَزَاءً مَوْفُورًا. Indeed, for you and those who follow you from the progeny of Adam, then all of you are destined to hellfire. So on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divided people into two categories. Those who will follow Shaytan, he says, فَمَنْ تَبِعَكَ, those who follow you. So those who follow Shaytan, and then he says, إِنَّ عِبَادِي لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٌ. My worshippers, my servants, you will have no control or no power over them. So Allah divided people into two camps, the camps of the followers of Shaytan and the camps of Ibadur Rahman, the servants of the most merciful. So my brothers and sisters, I talk to you today about which category are we in and which category do we want to be in, and how do we ensure that we belong to that camp, so that on the day of judgment we're not met with an unpleasant surprise. Before we do that, we have to understand exactly what is the plan that Shaytan will employ to make us from those who will join him in hellfire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about that plan and that strategy in the Quran, and that strategy is twofold. It consists of two parts. The first one is at-tazyin, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Hijr, as Shaytan says, قال رب بما أغويتني لأزينن لهم في الأرض ولأغوينهم أجمعين. Shaytan says, Lord, since you have made me go astray, I swear I shall beautify for them evils on earth, and I shall lead them all astray. So that is the first part, and this is the first part of his plan, my brothers and sisters, that is at-tazyin. What is tazyin? Tazyin is when Shaytan beautifies sins and evils in our minds and in our hearts so that we commit them. But not just committing sins, for we're all humans and we all make mistakes. The difference between sinning and tazyin is that when someone makes a mistake, when someone commits a sin, they can repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they feel remorse and regret in their heart. And if they repent to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive them and embrace them back with His mercy. But tazyin, my brothers and sisters, is when we make mistakes and then we justify those mistakes for ourselves. We find a reason or an explanation why I did that. It's not because I made a mistake. It's not because I slipped. It's not because Shaytan put an idea in my mind and I chose to follow that idea and implement it, but rather we come up with excuses, right? I yelled back at that person and I used all these obscenities because they got me upset. They got me frustrated. So we make excuses, and that is the first part of Shaytan's plan. To make you make a mistake or trick you into slipping and committing a sin, and then come up with an explanation for it. Because when you have an excuse for your actions, you're not going to feel regret or remorse. And when you don't feel regret or remorse, your conscience dies. And when your conscience dies, my brothers and sisters, then you are excluded from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because now there is nothing that holds you back and nothing to stop you. So now you are removed from the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as a result, you will never ask Allah for forgiveness and you will never repent and come back. That is the danger of tazyin, when you make a mistake and then you come up with an excuse for it. For example, our young brothers and sisters who go to school and go to university and go to college and mix with the wrong company, and then they start getting these ideas and their thoughts. Now is the time for experiment. Now is the time to try all sorts of things, because I'm still young. I can smoke to see what smoking feels like. I can try some drugs just to get a feel for it. I can be involved in this relationship where I can act this way, I can use this language, and I can dress this way. Why? Because I'm still young. I can try, I have time. I wanna explore life. I wanna see for myself, I wanna have fun. And then later on, I will repent, I will take my deen seriously. That is right there, and right then and right there, my brothers and sisters, that is tazyin. And that is the tazyin of Shaytan. When he convinces you to do things because they are justified, or at least in your mind, you think they are justified. When people start backbiting others, and you ask them, brother or sister, why are you backbiting this person? Why are you saying these things about them? Well, they earned it. They brought it upon themselves. They asked for it. They behaved this way. They behaved that way. Someone else's mistake or behavior does not give you the right to do something that is prohibited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Do not let the actions of others force you or compel you to act in an unjust and unrighteous way. So my brothers and sisters, that is the first part of Shaitan's plan right there. And when we follow that, when we fall victim for that tazyin, then Shaitan have accomplished his plan. And his plan, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء. Shaitan's ultimate goal is to plant enmity and malice between you. ويصدكم عن سبيل الله وعن الصلاة, and to prevent you from the path that would lead you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from establishing that connection with the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is at-tazyin. The second part of Shaitan's plan, my brothers and sisters, is at-takhwif. So he beautifies sins and bad actions in your mind and in your eyes, but he also uses fear to deter you from good actions. So at-tazyin wa at-takhwif. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about that in the Quran, that Shaitan would always put fear in our mind from what? From living with morals and ethics. Shaitan will come to you and tell you, this is not the time and this is not the age where you need to look out for other people. You should be just concerned with yourselves. Nobody does that anymore. These are outdated values. Shaitan will come and put fear in your heart when you're trying to help others, when you're thinking about spending and giving in charity. Shaitan will come to you and tell you, don't you know that you have this mortgage to pay and you have this other payment to make, and you need to save up for your kids' fund and for college, and you need to do this and you need to do that. You worked so hard for this money. Why do you want to give it to someone who doesn't deserve it? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in the Quran when He says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرِ. Shaitan will always frighten you with promises of poverty. And he will try to bid you to commit indecency. That's the second part of Shaitan's plan. He frightens you from doing what is right, hoping that will lead you to commit sins and fall away from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he continues in the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يَعِدُكُمْ مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْهُ وَفَضْلًا. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you, if you stick to your values and you live a moral life as He subhanahu wa ta'ala expects of us, then Allah promises you maghfirah. First, His forgiveness. He knows we will fall every now and then, so He will forgive that. وَفَضْلًا مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْهُ وَفَضْلًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will embrace you and shower you with His grace. Shaitan will come and also frighten you that you might lose people who are close to you, your friends, your job, your companions, your family, as he did with the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. After Yaqub alayhi salam raised all his children, and now they're all grown and they work and they're able to support themselves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with Yusuf and Binyamin. He has 2 young children now, so they need more attention, they need more time, they need more effort. So when the older brothers saw how much attention he was devoting to their younger brothers, they thought that now they have lost their father, or they're going to lose the love of their father. And Shaitan came to them and make that idea foster in their mind. And then what happens? We know the story. They took Yusuf alayhi salam, they threw him in a well, and so on. But at the end of the story, Yusuf alayhi salam says or makes dua, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the end of Surah Yusuf. He says to his father and his family after they come to Egypt and he has honored them and raised his parents on the throne of Egypt, he says وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيَّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored me and He has been so kind to me that He brought you here and put love back in our hearts. مِن بَعْدِ أَن نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَتِي. After Shaitan has put all these ideas and drove that wedge between my brothers and I. My brothers and sisters, today is Friday. Raise your hands, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make dua. ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. My brothers and sisters, today we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance He sent to us in the Quran to those who follow in the footsteps of Shaitan. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that following the footsteps of Shaitan will ultimately lead to regret and will ultimately lead to domination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran a story that will happen on the Day of Judgment, after the people of Jannah have entered Jannah and after the people of Hellfire enter Hellfire. He says that وَلَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ, or وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ. When everything is settled, when everything is said and done, and people now are in their eternal abodes, Shaytan will stand in Hellfire. And he will start giving this speech, giving this khutbah to all those who have followed him and all those who were damned because of him. He will say, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ. Shaytan will tell everybody, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given you the true promise. He promised you in this life. He promised you salvation. He promised you forgiveness. He promised you success. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ, but I also made some promises for you. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ, I made promises, but I broke all my promises to you. Shaitan can never keep a promise because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ultimately in control of everything. As if he's telling people, what's wrong with you? How could you equate my promise to the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What was wrong with you? Where was your mind when you chose to follow me over following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he says, وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ وَمَا كَانَ لِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I had no power or control over you except that I extended the invitation and you came in. You put in the effort. It was your fault where you are now. This is the result of your own actions. Don't blame this on me. Blame only yourselves. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not blame me, but blame only yourselves. مَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخِكُمْ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِي. Today I cannot help you, nor can you help me. As if he's giving them the ultimate truth that they should have realized in life. That the only one that you can really rely on, the only one that you can really turn to in life is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only promise you should consider is the promise of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala and not Shaitan. Now, my brothers and sisters, before we conclude, inshallah, I wanted to share with you some practical advice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger give us to make sure that we are not following in the footsteps of Shaitan. And the first and most important is never forget that Shaitan is there. Never forget about Shaitan. Always remember that Shaitan is there. If you're a fan of classic movies, such as myself, if you remember in the movie The Usual Suspects, right? The greatest lie or the greatest trick that the devil pulled on human beings is to convince them that he never existed. And that is extremely true. That is true, my brothers and sisters. Shaitan wants us to forget that he is there so that we think that every thought and every idea that comes to my mind is the result of our own thinking. So we follow it and we implement it without realizing where it's coming from and where it's going to lead us to. Psychologists have this concept that's called the golem or the chatterbox, which is all the ideas, that part of your mind that keeps putting all negative thoughts into your mind. Every time you want to do something, there is some resistance from your mind. You have a thought, well, what if you do this? What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? What if this disaster comes as a result? And that serves a purpose, because we need some kind of resistance in our mind. Life would turn into a disaster if we just follow every thought that pops in our mind. So this is why there need to be that resistance. However, Shaitan uses that as a door to come and implement some ideas into our mind as well. And the way to figure out which thoughts are yours and which thoughts are not is to grab a piece of paper and draw a line in the middle. And everything that is negative, every negative thought that comes into your mind, write it on one side. And then on the other side of the paper, write who you are, who you want to be, and who you believe yourself to be, and based on that, look at that person that you want to be and ask yourself, what would that person act and behave in that situation? What would that person say? If I think I am kind and gentle and forgiving, what would such a person act and behave in this way or in this situation? Rather than all the ideas of revenge that come to your mind, remind yourself, I think of myself as a forgiving person, and a forgiving person would forgive, would embrace, would repel evil with good. Do that with every situation in your life. Wallahi, my brothers and sisters, there is so much power in holding a piece of paper and a pen and writing things down. And this is why one of the first things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals in the Quran is that He is the one that taught humans how to use the pen, because there is a lot of power in that. So my brothers and sisters, do not forget that Shaytan is there. Always remind yourself that he is there. And this is why in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it very clearly. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا. Shaytan is your enemy, so treat him as an enemy. And when you have an enemy, you need to know what is that person doing, or what is that entity planning, so you're able to counter those plans. My brothers and sisters, surround yourself with good company. Because if you do not choose your own friends, Shaytan will choose friends with you. If you've ever heard the name of Uqbah ibn Abi Mu'ayt, it was a man who lived in Mecca at the time of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam started teaching the message of Islam, Uqbah liked what he heard from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And whenever the Prophet would be somewhere talking to people, preaching to people, educating people, Uqbah would go and listen to him. Now he never accepted Islam, mind you, but he was very interested in what the Prophet ﷺ used to say. Until people in Mecca started spreading rumors that Uqbah embraced Islam. And then his best friend came to him and told him, did you follow Muhammad? Are you following his deen now? And Uqbah says, no, I'm just curious about what he says. And then Uqbah tells, or his friend tells him, then I ask you, with everything, for the sake of the friendship that you and I have and everything we've went to together, you have to declare war on Muhammad. Take him as your enemy, leave him, abandon him. And that is when Uqbah, as we know, took one of the camels and slaughtered it. And when the Prophet ﷺ was making sujood in front of the Kaaba, he took the insides of that camel and threw it on the back of Muhammad ﷺ. And from that day forward, Uqbah became one of the most active people against Muhammad ﷺ in Mecca. And this is why Allah reminds us about the importance of that and how good company can protect you from falling into the footsteps of Shaytan. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us about the Day of Judgment, and He says, وَيَوْمَ يَعَضُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا يَا وَيْلَتَى لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أَتَّخِذْ فُلَانًا خَلِيلًا. On the Day of Judgment, people will feel so much regret, and they will wish they had followed the Prophet ﷺ or the messenger that was sent to them, and they will say, Ya waylata, woe unto me, laytani lam attakhiz fulanan khalila. How I wish I have never taken this person as a friend or as a companion. Another step that we can take to make sure that we are, or we end up on the camp of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are not from those who follow in the footsteps of Shaitan, my brothers and sisters, is dhikrullah, the constant remembrance and mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We says remember Shaitan so you can avoid his plots, but also remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so you can always bring him into your life. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about al-muttaqeen, those who are God conscious, and when they make a mistake, when they realize that Shaitan was able to trick them, what do? He says, تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. They remind themselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They get engaged in the mention and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as a result, فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. They are able to see things clearly again. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us be from those who follow Him and follow the road that leads us to Him, and not from those who follow the footsteps of Shaytan. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a clear sense of who we are and what is it that we strive for and what our purpose in this life is, so that we're always taking steps to get ourselves closer to that. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the insight and the patience to be able to hold and control and discipline ourselves, so that we're able to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and that we are so happy and proud when we meet the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. اللهم اغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا وما أسررنا وما أعلنا وما أنت يا ربنا أعلم به منا. تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم، وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم، واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا إنك على ذلك قدير وبالإجابة جدير. وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.